story, as he told me, was that 2020 he Rabbi YY was going to Rostov, which is a city in Russia.
I met the shliach.
I met the shliach. He's very famous on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
He was being brought out by Rabbi Danziger in Rostov, which Rostov is where the kever of the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth of Abba Rebbe is. So they wanted to bring out Rabbi YY for the yahrzeit, for the Rebbe Rashab's yahrzeit. So he realized about 2 weeks before he's supposed to go, he realized that his passport is about to expire. So he found some lady in Muncie, because everything in Muncie that some lady does something. So he found a lady in Muncie who renews your passport for you. She does it within a week or two. So he goes there, he takes pictures, and he fills out the forms. And then the lady says, I should know, Rabbi, why I owe you a debt of gratitude. So he said, why? So he said, I'll tell you a story. She says, we're from, you see my husband, her husband was sitting learning Masechet Pesachim, he told me. Sitting learning Masechet Pesachim at the table. And we're a yeshivish family. He says, but our son went off the derech. He didn't fit in school. It didn't work for him. And we decided as a family that we're not going to be, we're going to treat him with love, just open, unconditional love, and hopefully that'll work. So comes obviously grows up. He meets a girl, Baruch Hashem, she's Jewish, and they get married. They said they come before the wedding. They decided they're going to make a full regular wedding. They're not going to do a small wedding. So their family live in Lakewood and live in Moscow. Told them no, it's going to be an embarrassment to make a small wedding. It's like, no, for our son, we're going to make a full wedding. Make a full wedding with beautiful. Anyway, on the ride home after the wedding, the mother's driving home, and she just this wind of sadness, vibe of sadness just overcomes her. She feels sad after driving home. So she decides, you know what? I always enjoy listening to Rabbi YY's YouTube video. I watch him on YouTube. I'm going to watch a video. Turns on the video, and this is what the first video she sees is Rabbi YY speaking. So what's he speaking about? And this is actually how this conversation started, because we were talking about this story. And we're talking about the story now. I mentioned this story this week by the Yud Shvat from Mengen Shul. Yud Shvat was the yahrzeit of the previous Abba Rebbe. So basically, it must have been 1944. The previous Rebbe was still alive. So the most recent Rebbe, who at that time was known as the Ramash, Rebbe Nachum Schneerson, he worked in the main office of Chabad, and he was like always around 770, etc. So he comes down from upstairs from his father-in-law, the Rebbe's office, and he comes down to where all the Bachrim are, where the yeshiva is, and he sees these Bachrim who were talking about absolutely nothing. He sees them just sitting there schmoozing. So he says, he says, "Was here a fresh Shabbat from Rebbe? Do you want to hear a new idea from the Rebbe, which hasn't been come out yet?" So he's like, "Sure." So he said, he gave some background to the story. He gave background to what he was told. Basically, he works in the office, and what happens is a lot of people come to the office. They want to see what Chabad is. They want to see 770. 770 wasn't much then, but they want to see what it is. So a lot of the time, these people have originally come from Hamish families from back in the day, but now they're like, whatever, they're not so from anymore, but they still have some connection. So what does he do? He has a big smile on his face. He talks to them about what Chabad does, and etc. He said even sometimes he puts tefillin on them, which obviously is interesting, because obviously the tefillin campaign only came 20 years later. But nevertheless, he even does this. But he said, and this is the question he had for his father-in-law, was he said the elder Chassidim, the old-timers who came over from the old country, who were in their 80s, 90s, they saw what the Rebbe was doing, what the Ramash at the time was doing, but being so nice to them. So he says, you're condoning what they're doing. You're condoning the idea of not being Shem Torah mitzvahs. So he says, how could you do that? So the Rebbe had this question for his father-in-law. The Ramash had this question for his father, Frierdiker Rebbe. He asked him, what should I do? Are they right? Am I right? What should I do? So the Frierdiker Rebbe answered like this. He said, a parent, when they have a child, he said, they love them so much. It's unconditional love, but it fills their heart. It's like you could never think there could be so much love in a person's heart, but they're able to give that kid so much love. And it's full with love. It's like it can't get any bigger. And then what happens? They have another child, and they find another way. They find a way to give the same amount of love to the next child. And what happens if Rahman al a person has a child who has special needs or is disabled or handicapped in any sense? In a way, there's a little bit more love. Like that child gets a little more love than the rest of them because it is what it is. You're able to find that little more love. So that's begashmias, and that's with a parent to a child. But it's also the same way between Hashem to his children, and it's also the same way with a person who's spiritually handicapped. Person has a spiritual handicap. They push it. Something happens. Everything in this world, Arizal says, is a mirror of what goes above. So physical body is a mirror of something that goes up spiritually. So a person who doesn't put on tefillin has a problem with his arm spiritually. It's the same idea. All these things. So a person who's spiritually handicapped, who's missing out on Hashem Torah mitzvahs, you need to show them even more love. And what the word he used was an eigenartig love, lipshaft. An eigenartig means like a unique, extraordinary love. So he said, so if you could Rebbe and looked at the Rebbe and says, you're doing the same thing the Eibishter does. You're doing the same thing Hashem that you're doing. You're loving his children just like Hashem would. He told this. That was the story that the woman heard, and the woman, when she heard the story, the mother, she was like, oh, such a beautiful story. It gave her like some menuchas and nefesh. Rabbi Jacobson then looked at her and said, when was the wedding? She said, February something. She said, that was Yud Shua. That was the Frierdiker Rebbe's yard site. I was Farbringing somewhere, and I told the story over in what's called that place in Muncie, the shul, by Shiner's shul. I said that over in the tent. I was Farbringing, and that's where I told the story. And you heard me when I was telling that story. She said, oh, wow. And she said, well, let me tell you another story. It's actually about 6 stories in one.
Yeah.
Let me tell you another story.
On stories on stories.
So let me tell you another. She said, let me tell you another story. She said, I didn't grow up from. I'm a Baal Shuva. And she said, my father, his parents grew up from, but when they came over, they were no longer from. They came to America, they were no longer from. And his parents died when he was very young. But he was very close to his uncle. His uncle was a shtickle from, was a modern Orthodox. So his uncle lived in Brooklyn and decided one Sunday to take him to the Frierdiker Rebbe for Yechidus in the 40s. He decided to take the Frierdiker Rebbe for Yechidus. And in the Yechidus, the Frierdiker Rebbe said, he gave him lots of brachas and over again. And then he said to him, du wirst haben nachas from the kinder and from the kindskinder. You're going to have nachas from your children and from your children's children. He didn't think anything about it. Okay, fine. Anyway, he wasn't from. He goes off, he decides to open a business. He decides to move to San Diego. He's in San Diego in the middle of the 70s in San Diego. One day he's in the supermarket. He has no connection to this guy. One day in the supermarket, he sees this guy with a long beard and a hat. And he says to the guy, what the hell are you doing here? So he says, I'm the new shliach. I just moved to town. It was Yonah Fradkin. I'm the Chabad shliach in San Diego. So that's Rabbi Fradkin, and he says to him, why don't you come to shul the Shabbos? It's beautiful kiddush. It's davening. So he comes. He comes for Shabbos. He davens. He comes to kiddush, and then afterwards he goes to play golf. And he has 2 daughters. So he says with his 2 daughters, he starts telling to them, after a while, he says, why don't you come to a class? They tell him, no, I want to go to the disco and do that. Don't come. And when these 2 daughters start coming to Chabad, they start hearing, they start internalizing it. And he said, they really starts meaning something to them. And he said that after a while, they became Shomer Shabbos, more of them. They went off to seminary. And they built, and then they got married and built beautiful Jewish families. They both live in New York. So she remembers one time that her father came to New York for Shabbos, sitting around the table with the family, with all the kids, and singing the mirrors around the table, and he looks at all his kids and his children, his grandchildren. He says, now I see that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe's bracha was Mekuyim. He says, because the children and your children's children. So she says, she thinks she's retelling the story now to Rabbi Jacobson. A year later, she calls Rabbi Jacobson and tells him, you should know. He says that I have my son and daughter-in-law here for Shabbos. And he said, they asked me, right at the end of Shabbos, they asked me, is Shabbos over yet? And I said, yeah. So they ran into their rooms and brought out their phones. So you can see from that they're obviously keeping Shabbos now as well. She said, this is what the Frierdiker Rebbe said. This is the nachas. They can get. But how did it all come about? It all became why? Because the Frierdiker Rebbe explained, and this is the idea of every single one of us. You can't lose anything if you give unconditional love to someone. You show them love, no matter what, they'll always have a connection with you, and eventually, Be'ez Hashem, they'll come back. But even not, whatever, they'll come back because they want to come back, because whatever it is. But you only have to show them love, and that's the only way.
That's what I also say. Ava is from the Lashon Hav to give.
The Lashon Hav to give. Right. Yeah, but you know what? It's true. Ava is Lashon Hav, but you also have to take. You have to take as well. You can't just give. There has to be a give and take. We're naturally we take, but I'm saying we have to be both. Right. Ava has to be both. You have to be able to give and take. The idea is that beautiful that was the story he told me. That, so I knew the story of the Frierdiker Rebbe about the Vord, which he said that story I knew, but the rest of the story I had no idea. It was an amazing. It's a powerful story.
Beautiful.
Slap it around.
Teddy Newman, Shkaya, thank you. We'll put you in the YouTube description on the video. Okay. Okay, let me get my headphones on. We're going to do Nazir, the bottom of Yud Beis, Amid Beis. We're doing this on a Zoom-like account because Rabbi Binyomin is traveling for business. Baruch Hashem. Hold on.
I'm business over here. Can you hear me well? Is there too much background noise?
No, I hear you perfectly. Give me a 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 1, 2. Testing.
Was that a problem? I grew up.
Okay, great. There's a little bit of a delay now. Do you hear a delay?
I never took my time off. You know?
I don't hear a delay.
Oh, we're good now. Okay. You hear me okay, Rabbi Binyomin?
A-okay.
Okay, it looks like it's a bit of a shorter daf. Okay, we're going to start this daf, Yud Beis Amid Beis. We'll do some timestamps to show people that it starts at around the 11:25 mark. And here we go. Mishnah, new Mishnah. Hareini Nazir l'chshiyah li bein. If someone says, I'm hereby a Nazir when a son will be born to me, b'noyad li bein, and a son is born to him, Harei's a Nazir, he's a Nazir. Ha-noylad li bas, if a daughter is born to him, or if a child of tumtum androgynous, indeterminate gender or androgynous, ain't a Nazir, he is not a Nazir. Im Amar Kashihi Ali Volad, if he said, I'm hereby a Nazir when I will have a child, Afilu Noilad Loi Bas, Tumtum Androgynous, Harezed Nazir. He is a Nazir. Now, jumps out at me a few different things. Why do I need the Seifa? Meaning, I can't infer that from the Resha, right? Like, if he's going to make a condition, and the condition comes true, then he's a Nazir. If it doesn't come true, it's not true. He's not a Nazir. So if he says a child, then any child should make him a Nazir. Also, we never really addressed this, Rabbi Binyomin, because this idea of I'm going to be a Nazir if something's born to me, is that like a certain level of doubt? Or no, it's just solely condition-based. And he's 100% certain, like, if this happens to me, it's a sign and I'm going to be a Nazir.
I was going to say this the third time, I never
Yeah, I kind of answered my own question. It's just a condition. It's not like there's a doubt on his mind. Because you do need that. Yeah.
It's almost like if the cow gets up, right? You're tying your Naziros to an event.
Right. Okay, he pila ishtay. Now he said, I'm going to be a Nazir on the birth of a child. The child was born, but it didn't survive. The wife lost the child. Ain't a Nazir. Rabbi Shimon says he's a Nazir, out of doubt. Yomi, he should say im haya ben kayam, if it was a viable child, any Nazir chayva. I'm already a Nazir by my previous obligation. Bim lav hare ani Nazir nedava. I'm hereby a Nazir voluntarily. Wow, that's loaded. That's loaded. Right?
Yeah.
So if he said, I'm going to be a Nazir if I have a child, and his wife lost the child, he's not a Nazir according to the Tanakama. According to Reb Shimon, if that happens,
it's a safek.
It's a
we
safek.
don't know whether or not, maybe, he had a child, but then it just didn't survive. So it was the Nazir's Khal. So now, it's a safek, we have a problem because either he should be a Nazir, the problem is he has to bring kabbalas and he has to shave his head, and we already said, right, shaving the head includes shaving off your payas, and you can't shave your payas if you're not a Nazir. So now you're in this you can't just say chumrah, because then you have a chumrah the other way of you're not allowed to just bring a carbon for no reason, like carbon katas, and you're also not allowed to shave your head. So he has a smart thing where he says you should say If it really was a viable child, then that meant that I was a Nazir. I'm very good. I'm a Nazir Chayva. If it wasn't a viable child, then I'll be a Nazir Nadava. Then I'm adding on this new one.
It's always back.
And it's important that he says he's a Nazir Nadava, because if it was like, why does he have to say, if it's not a viable child, why does he have to say Harini Nazir Nadava? That's because his initial statement could be nothing, and we want him to take on Naziris and not just shave his payas out of doubt. And I just see here on the bottom, when it says it's not a viable child, it doesn't mean a miscarriage. It means a child that was born for a few seconds and then died. Miscarriage is not referred to as a child. And here come the democratic, in terms of what is a child. But that's not for this. That's not for this particular stream.
Oh, that's a good question, huh?
Chazra v'yalda. Okay, the doubt resulting from a birth of a non-surviving child carries over to the next birth as well. Chazra v'yalda. If she gave birth again, this time to a viable child, right, let's say 9 months later, or maybe even a double, twins, and the second one is viable, Hareza Nazar. According to the Tanakama, he is a Nazar, I would imagine, because that was the he didn't specify his next child. He just said a child, and now when I have it, Rabbi Shimon Aimer, he's a Nazar again out of doubt, and he should say Im Harishan ben Kayama. If the first child was viable, Harishan Chayva v'Zaynadava. The first Nazirus was obligatory, and this one is voluntary. Vim Lav, but if the first child was not viable, Harishan Nadava v'Zaychava. The first Nazirus was voluntary, and this one is obligatory. Wow, Reb Shimon really goes into the kishkas of what he said and wants to cover all his corners.
And it makes sense. Right?
Why, Reb Binyomin? If the first child was viable, why does he have to take on a voluntary Nazirus here? The he already fulfilled his claim. Why? Is it because he was vague? No.
Because if the first one was really a Nadava, that means...
No, it's not.
That
he says if it wasn't...
You don't know what the first one was. We don't know if the first one was viable or not viable. So in the event...
No, it was not viable.
Yeah, but we're not sure.
No, we know it's not viable. We just don't know.
That's not true.
If it makes... Yes, we know it was not viable. We just don't know if the Nazirus is Khal on a non-viable child.
No.
Yes.
Well, okay. Well, there was a child. So the question is, was the original Nazirus ever Khal? Fine. I guess the suffix, there's still an original suffix. You don't know whether or not that first Nazirus that he had with that non-viable child was ever Khal. And therefore, so when the second one is born, we still don't know whether, like the Tanakama is going to say, he's just a Nazir now, from his original statement. When to Shimon, you still have that suffix, so he has to do this like Tanai. Oh, if the first one wasn't viable, then this is my original Nazira statement, and if not, then it's an Adab.
So if the first child was viable, the first Nazirus was obligatory.
Yes.
And this one is voluntary, according to Reb Shimon. But if the first child was not viable, the first Nazirus, meaning, according to Reb Shimon, he's saying that first birth is inconclusive. And because it's inconclusive, we're still left in a state of doubt, and that's why the second one will impact how we looked at the first one, and we need to clear him from this Nazirus. So, Frak the Gemara, Hi my Lamemra. This initial teaching of the Mishnah, when it says, I'm hereby a Nazir when a son is born to me, and a son is born to him, he's a Nazir. What does that come to teach? It's always interesting, because it could have said Shita also, right? I guess I don't know if it's dependent, or it's coming to ask something else, different than Pshita. But what are we trying to teach if it seems relatively obvious? Mishum Seif. It's included in the Mishnah only because of the latter case of the Mishnah, where it says, Bas Tumtum Androgynous Ein Nazir. If a daughter was born to him, or a child of indeterminate gender or androgynous, he is not a Nazir. Meaning what? We're setting up the case. That first case we really don't need, but we were setting it up to teach you this other case of if a daughter was born to him or an indeterminate gender or an androgynous, he is not a Nazir. Meaning, it would have been weird to start the case of the Mishnah with just that case, so we're really setting it up. Frak the Gemara, Pshita, which I think I was asking in the Mishnah. I was Mechavan Rabbi Binyomin. Would you say I was not?
Rebelli. Yeah, I was going to say that, but I didn't want to cut you off there. But this sounded like Rebelli's question.
So take it away. What do we have to say over here?
So Mahu the Tema Likashaibone the Tamar. You might have said he meant when I will be built up, in which case he would be a Nazir, even with the birth of a daughter or a Tumtum Androgynous. Meaning, when he said, Harini Nazir L'Shili Ben, maybe Ben doesn't mean like literally a son. It means it comes from the root of Bina, build, right? Building a family. So maybe it includes any gender.
I mean, obviously,
Kamash Malan, the life, right? It's Dafka, he, him, not she, they, or anything else.
Think about it. How many stable people?
So that is what the Mishnah is teaching us. That specifically, if he says Ben, no, it actually means a son and nothing else.
So that answers why I need the first one.
Right. It still doesn't. Yeah. Because you can. That's still all within the first case. It's just the second statement of the first case, right? If we read the Mishnah again, there's Haredi Nazir Chili Ben, the Noilad Ben, the son was born to Haredi Nazir. And then part B of that is Noilad Bas.
No, but right there, Haredi Nazir, that's because he's a Ben, he's a son. It's not that if he had a daughter. Oh, I guess it's part of it. And if he has a daughter,
if he has a daughter though,
then he's not.
So we just said, it's Pasha that Haredi Nazir has a Ben, and you're right. We'll agree to that. But then it's even saying, no, like Bas Nazir is also Pasha. We're saying no, it's not so Pasha because you could have thought that any child is under the category of Ben. And I think actually, if you ask an Israeli, like sometimes I think like the Lashon Zachar could be used for both, right? A Ben could be a child. It's not necessarily a son. I think I've heard that before.
Yeah, the Rush brings it from Rachel, where it says, Ve'ibane. Rachel pleaded for children. She spoke of being built up.
Right.
So maybe
it's like children. So anyways, though, that's what the Mishnah is coming to teach. The Chiddush is that if a person says Ben, it's Dafka, a male son. Okay, bye. The Mishnah proceeds to the next declaration mentioned in the Mishnah. Here we go. Mem Amar Kishia li Vlad. But if he said, I'm a Nazir if I have a child, then it's any gender. Pshita. What is this adding? You might have said that in order to satisfy the condition, we need a child that is considered prominent among people, which is a son, a boy. You need your man. Kamash Malan, no, any children. So it's not Pasha. And you would think, what do you mean? He said a Vlad. But some people might think, what's a Vlad? A Vlad has to be something that's like chashav by people, and definitely hear it in certain circles where an important child would be only a son. Okay, Kamash Malan, it's any gender. Okay. But Epilisha in a Nazir. Right. Third, what's the next case? The wife lost a child, and the baby did not survive, and it was unclear whether it was born viable or not. Or that is the Safa. So Mangatanila, who is this Tana? Rabbi Yehuda Dichriu. It's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda of the pile. That's a great name.
What does that mean? Rabbi Yehuda of the pile.
Yeah.
He maintains that if a doubt arises whether condition for a Nazir has been satisfied, the person does not intend to become a Nazir. Oh, if there's any doubt. Who has the doubt? Is it him? Is it us? Probably us. Or it's unclear.
Well,
Why
so
why
let's
does
look
Yehuda
at,
hold that? Meaning, why don't we ask him what his intent was? Okay, but we'll get there.
right.
But what does that mean, Rabbi Yehuda of the Brisa of a pile? What does that mean,
Okay.
Rabbi Binyomin? Because
So
usually
let's,
Rabbi Yehuda is from a place, Rabbi Yehuda the son of someone, Rabbi Yehuda of a pile? I mean, what's meant us, Rabbi Binyomin?
you know what? I'll tell you what it is. And I think I love this actually, because some people are known by the place they come from. Some people are known from their father. Oh, Eli ben, I forget Khal's name. But some people are known by the Torah that they learned, by the Chiddush that they left behind. So that is their legacy. So the Yehuda the Chriyu, I love it. So, but let's take a look at the little note down there. So it's some medium size. The Gemara above quoted a brisa dealing with a pile of produce. And what was it? If someone says, I'm a Nazir in condition that there are 100 cores in this pile, and he went on and discovered that the pile was stolen or lost and could no longer be measured, Rav Shimon considers him a Nazir, since uncertainties regarding Naziris are decided stringently. But Rav Yehuda permits him. Why? He's not even a Suffolk Nazir, since uncertainties regarding Naziris are decided leniently. In Rav Yehuda's view, since a questionable Naziris results in greater stringency than a definite one, it's presumed that the person did not intend to become a Nazir in these questionable circumstances. And as explained earlier, questionable Naziris cannot be terminated by shaving and bringing offerings, right? Because that it is itself as a chumrah, you're not allowed to do that. So although the problem can be overcome in the manner suggested by Rav Shimon in the Mishnah, questionable Naziris is nevertheless viewed as being more stringent than definite Naziris. So Rabbi Yehuda has this opinion that any time
What does that last sentence mean? What does that last sentence? It's viewed more questionable as viewed as being more stringent.
Because, like we kind of just said, right? If you have a questionable Naziris, you're really stuck, because if you become a Nazir and you're not really a Nazir, then you're not allowed to shave your head. You're not allowed to bring those karbanos. So now what? You're going to have to bring on you're going to say, okay, I'm an Adava Naziris, but just in case you are a Nazir, then it complicates more things. I think that's what it is, right? Because you're not allowed to do certain things. So you can't just say, oh, a Chumrah, I'll just become a Nazir. But you can't take on that Chumrah, right?
Rabbi Yomi, do you think that when people remember me, they'll be like, oh, Rabbi Eli from Chavrusa Daf, like Rabbi Yehuda of the Brisa of a Pile. Back in the day, I used to have Torah text. I used to send out a daily vart on the Parsha. And Abi Rosenberg called me the Torah text guy. Like, that's how he's right. So I do like this idea. The question is, if I'll be known as, people say, oh, you're the kosher money guy. Oh, you're, Eli from Brooklyn used to call the radio. Maybe I'll be a little bit more chashiv than the radio guy. I'll be the one of the Chavrusa Daf guys. Oh, you're a Binyomin, the Chavrusa Daf guy. Have you gotten that? Have people stopped you in shul, Rabbi Binyomin, and said, "Hey, you are how's the Chavrusa Daf going? Oh, I saw something, anything."
Well, yeah, multiple people. But I think it's going to catch on.
A pile could also be negative reference, so in some ways we should be careful how we use the pile. But go ahead, Rabbi Binyomin. Not in this case, Rabbi Yehuda was talking about Holy Torah. But go ahead, Rabbi Binyomin. I love these little bites. We're going in little bites. It's like little stop and goes. It's very digestible, this stuff.
Okay, so just because I kind of lost the train of thought, so we brought in the part of the Mishnah that was talking about the wife lost the child. We said she's not, that he's not a Nazir. So who would that kind of be? Rabbi Yehuda the Chriyu. Why? Because he holds that anytime you have, this is what it is. Anytime you have a suffix Naziris, the person didn't want to be a Nazir, and therefore you're not a Nazir.
Rabbi Newman, do you need to be an adult to be a Nazir? Like, my question really is, can a father make his daughter a Nazir?
So first of all, are you asking, can it be a female? Can it be
no, a female could be a Nazir, but can I delegate Naziris to a child, and that child has to become a Nazir, or do you need to be a certain age?
I don't recall. I feel like maybe did the intro bring that up? I don't know the answer.
Okay, we're getting to a teiku right now, so I'm excited. Within the theme of not knowing, go ahead, Rabbi Binyomin.
Oh, No, we're going to take our first Teiku, right? Is this our first Teiku in Nazir?
Yes. We Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. If anyone asks trivia question, says stops you in the street, when is the first Teiku? It is on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph in Masechtas Nazir.
All right. Okay, I'm going to take us there then. Rabbi Shimon Aimer. Okay. So Rabbi Shimon say Yaimar. He should say Im Haya Ben Kayama Harini Nazir Chayba. Im Lav, and if it wasn't, then Harini Nazir Nadava. Now, there's another variation of this mission, and this is how it went. Ba'amine Rabbi Abba Mirabuna. Harini Nazir Kshili Ben. I will be a Nazir when I have a son. Vehepila Ishtai Vehifresh Karban, and he set aside a Nazir sacrifice. Chazra V'Yaldan, that she gave birth again on the same day. I guess this was like your case, probably a twin, right? The first one probably wasn't born. So Mahu. So Aliba the man.
So hold on. He. I just want to get the case clear.
Yeah.
So this Rab Abba comes to Rab Huna's house, knocks on his door, and says, "I have a question for you. Someone said I'm hereby Nazir when I have a son, and his wife lost the child.
But it's supposed to be in the bus at 7:00.
So we don't know in this case whether or not she had a male child, right? Is that part of it, or no? In this case, it was a son.
How do you deal with the range? How does that deal with it?
Well, I would think that you would still know what the gender is, right? If there's a suffix, if it's viable or not, you definitely know what the. I would assume you definitely know what the gender is. But that is a good question.
When we're heading into sex fake territory, but that wasn't my intention. Okay, so you assume the wife and his wife had a son and lost the son. Okay, let's assume that. The Hifrish carbon, and he set aside a Nazir sacrifice. So he started, in this case, the motion of assuming that he's a Nazir, right, in some respects.
Yeah.
But the consecration is effective only if the person is in fact a Nazir. And then the honey calls him on the cell phone and says, "Oh, by the way, I felt some kicking." We don't have sonograms back in the day. And then, boom, she gives birth again. It's twins. And she gives birth to a healthy baby. Again, I'm assuming it's twin boys, right?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay. I just wanted to get the case because that will allow me to better understand the clarification of the question. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thanks for clarifying there. So now we are going to even clarify this question. Now, Aliba the man, when Rabbi Abba asked Rav Huna, according to who was he asking the question? He Aliba the Rav Shimon. And if he was asking it, Aliba the Rav Shimon, Mighty Boyle, what's the question? Ha'amar Rav Shimon, Savig Naziris Lahachmir. We already saw Rav Shimon said you have to be machmir and give like the whole if it was ben kayama, then it's a Nazir chayva. If it wasn't, it's a Nazir nadava. So here too, he would say the same thing. What's the question? You have to be machmir and Aliba the Rabbi Yehuda. And if he was asking the question, Aliba the Rabbi Yehuda, who normally says anytime there's a suffix, you do Savig Naziris Lahakel. Then what's the status of the animal? Oh, so Elav leave the Yehuda. Obviously, then the question had to have been Yehuda, who holds Savig Naziris Lahakel. So now what's now the status of this animal that he already set aside? Kadosh or like Kadosh? Is it Kadosh or is it not? And then my nafkamina l'gizas level avid by, right? Would you allow to share it for its wool or work at the field? Teiku, we don't know the answer to this question. Now, before we get to that Teiku, fine. I would think right away, if I was trying to answer this question, what would I say? I would say it's Kadosh, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, at the end of the day, he had a son. So what's now the Shiloh?
No, I'll tell you what the Shiloh is.
There's no suffix. What's the suffix?
Uncertainties regarding Naziris are decided. Oh, I hear what you're saying. He says, I'm sorry, Rabbi Yehuda says, Safek Naziris Lahakel. So Naziris are decided leniently.
But that makes sense when you
but
don't know.
But the setting aside of a Nazir sacrifice, when he actually set it aside, it was Lahakel. He wasn't a Nazir. He didn't have the ability to were Makel in that case. Then later on, she gave birth again on the same day. So he has to set aside a Nazir sacrifice, but But does he have to set aside a new sacrifice, or can he use that previous one? I'm making this up as I go.
Yeah, so the question, I thought he had set it aside like earlier. I thought he had set it aside like, when she was going into labor or something. Are you saying that he set it aside like after the first one was born, and therefore that whole setting aside was in and itself a whole suffix? I guess.
I hear your question. I don't know, but
otherwise,
right. I assumed that it was he set it aside after. Meaning you can't set it aside until your Nazirus is activated. You have to first be a Nazir and then set it aside. So he said, I had a baby. She had a son. Let me set this aside. Oh, by the way, the baby died. Oh, the baby died? I already set something aside. Oh, yeah, she just had another baby. Okay, so what happens to the things that I set aside? Oh, according to Rabbi Yehuda, uncertainties regarding the Nazirus are decided leniently. Okay, so I'm not a Nazir, but what happens to that? Nazirus is decided. I don't have to shave. I don't have to bring a carbon, etc. But what about the fact that I set something aside and it could be kaddish? Are we makel there also or not? And the practical difference is in regards to sharing and working with it.
Right.
So
now,
go ahead.
According to Rabbi Yehuda, he would have to become a Nazir though. Ultimately, now that there's a healthy baby.
Correct.
Right. The question is on this carbon. Okay.
Oh, hold on. Is that true though? Did we see? Did he address that in the Mishnah, or you just assuming that?
I'm assuming that because this is like the case where like a year later he has a healthy kid. Then
you're right. The Mishnah says that Chazra v'yalda hareza nazar.
Right.
Yehuda
so let's see that note
says.
18. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the birth of the first child ought not to make him a Nazir because the uncertainty as to its viability. Thus, the consecration of Nazir sacrifices that followed that birth ought not to take effect. That answers that. Although the subsequent birth of a healthy child means that he is a Nazir in any case, the sacrifices cannot be consecrated in advance of that Nazirus. Okay. That was something I did not know. You cannot set aside the karbanos for your Naziris before you ever a Nazir.
Continue, because the next sentence is the Chiddush.
However, it's possible that the birth of the healthy twin might be an indication that even the dead child was carried to full term. However, it's possible that the birth of that even the dead child was carried to full term.
I learned that the way I explained it 2 minutes ago is different than what it's explaining now.
Yeah,
I explained it to mean that, in regards to the actual him being a Nazir, that's where you go lahaka. But in terms of the carbon, there's still a little bit of a suffix. No, Nazirus is Nazirus. We're lahaka. But now that you had the second viable twin, it's not 9 months later, it's the same day, might show that the first one, Taka, was a viable first baby, and therefore he was a Nazir, and then he was made something a carbon, and now we're left in doubt. So do we go back and say, is that enough to the second baby being healthy? Is that enough to go back and say it was a good Naziris, and that is a kaddish dika,
very
item.
good. So
hold on.
Right.
So why not just say that this? Okay, now you had a baby. Just take that animal that's still in question and make it kaddish, and make it your carbon.
I don't think that.
Right. Yeah,
but I don't think you could because it's a different. I don't think that you could make it a carbon because then it belongs to Right.
If he was never really a Nazir, then him setting aside the karbanos should have had no effect.
Right. Okay, we have a question at the 39-minute mark. Yeah, finish it off.
And if he was a Nazir, that's great. It works. And then the karbanos should be kadosh. So I don't see... Oh, wait, hold on. The question is the animal kadosh or not? Right. So I'm just thinking now, I don't see the reason why it should not be kadosh.
Meaning, what if he decides he
Oh, he
does
wants
not
to use
want
it.
to use
Right.
this animal. How do you look at that first animal?
Right. Meaning,
Is it Kaddish or not?
right. You're right. It sounds like he's going to be a Nazir, so he still has to bring karbanos. The question is really just, is this specific animal kaddish or not? And that is still a question, because that we don't know.
Right.
And
I
it's
would
not
not
he's
have
going to have to bring
gotten that.
karbanos.
Right. I
So
would
it's a
not have
funny
gotten
question.
this had we not had Chavrusa Daf, by the way. When you talk it out and hear other people, it's a game changer. This is why I want to do a separate video talking about the benefits of Chavrusa Daf. I don't feel like people they don't get it. And part of the reason is they say, okay, I understand why you want to record with somebody. Why should someone want to listen to it?
What time did I pick up, Esther?
And I don't have a good answer yet.
I think the point really is we just want to get a movement of people to do Chavrusa Daf. Not necessarily to listen to it. Because I think the people that will gain the most is us. And we want other people to have that benefit, not just us.
Do you think people would buy in for that benefit, knowing that not many people will listen to their Chavrusa session? Or maybe that's not true. If you come prepared and you're ready to, someone's like, can you just give me the Batala parts of your thing? I'd want to just watch that. So there's not really a lot of Batala, but there is some extra flavor and things like that. And I'm also curious, someone who wants to learn the daf and doesn't want it spoon-fed to them, would they enjoy a good Chavrusa shop that toils in figuring out the shot with them?
I think it could be, but it's going to require more effort from us. We would have to do more preparation, because part of it is like, I'm coming completely unprepared. This is like raw. If it was a little bit more prepared, then I think people might be more interested. Like, imagine Belly Stefanski was doing a Chavrusa shaft with like one of the other top Yomi guys. That would be incredible, right? I would sit through that. Right. So if we were like that, I think then for sure. I think there's still merit in what we do.
Yeah. Also, I noticed that your earphones have fallen out a couple times. Do you pin that on the tip because they come in different sizes? Or no, you're just violently shaking your head during...
I'm violent. I'm like, I'm not crazy.
Is that the largest tip it comes with? Because they have different tips.
I'm actually wearing the small here. I felt like this was the best, because the medium didn't even like stay, like push it out immediately. What I've heard people do is they put tip instead. They get like these like memory foam things. They sell them on Amazon, I've heard, but I've never tried it out.
Wonderful.
My grandmother makes it sound like
Okay. Weiter, take us through the next part of the Gemara Binyomin.
Ooh. Okay, you sure you want me to do it?
Yeah, we got some background noise here, so you take it away.
Okay. Do you hear the ocean in the background? A little bit.
Actually, I do. Now that you mention it, I kind of like that. Wonder if it'll play in the recording.
All right. Bamine ben Rachumi me Abai. Ben Rachumi. Oh, I used to know the guy's name was Ben Rachumi. Interesting. Bamine ben Rachumi me Abai. Harini Nazir Chil Ben. All right, I think we've seen this statement before. Someone says, "I'm a Nazir when I'll have a son." Ooh, we're blending two different Gemaras together. Someone else heard him and said, "V'alai," and is coming upon me as well.
Classic case of Shimon copying Reuven. Shimon, you are your own person. Take it upon yourself like a man. But he didn't.
No,
it's like I'm
and
sometimes. I don't blame Shimon. Sometimes Reuben kills him. So, let's go easy on Shimon. He doesn't have it so easy. Shout out to all the second sons, second children.
I'm an only son, so I have a whole different set of stuff. Anyways, Mahu. Advuri Mashma, is it referring... Does his va'alai refer to his words, in which case the second person means that he too will be a Nazir when the first person has a son? Like Agufei Mashma, does it refer is referred to his own person, and therefore this Shimon, he's saying that he becomes a Nazir when he himself has his own son. So is he going on Shimon, on Reuven's son, or is it on Shimon having a son? Okay, good question.
I like it. I mean, Reb Abin before didn't know. He asked Rav Huna. And Rachumi doesn't know. He asked Shabaya. It's okay to ask.
Okay to ask. There we go. Imtim Salemer. So now, good question. Imtim Salemer Agufei Mashma. If you say that it refers to his own person, Amar Harini Nazir L'Kshil Ben. Sorry. Just read it. Imtim Salemer Agufei Mashma. If it's referring to himself, right, that when Shimon has his own kid, then Omar, what about if he said Harini Nazir L'Kshil Ben? I'm here by a Nazir when I have a son. Oh, sorry. Then what? Again, if we're saying that when Shimon has a son, then what if Amar Harini Nazir L'Kshil Ben? Reuven says I'm a Nazir when I have a son. And then Shimon goes and says, Ve'ani Mahu Anafshei Ka'amar. This is when he's saying and I about himself, in which case he intends to be a Nazir when he has his own son. I love you as much as you love yourself, and I too will be a Nazir when you have a son. Oh my. So what's the difference in this first Ba'imine and the second part? In the first one, the guy said, right, Harini Nazir L'Kshil Ben, and all he said was, V'alai. The second case, he said, Harini Nazir L'Kshil Ben, and Shimon says, V'ani. Right. So even if you say in the first one, when the guy says V'alai, that it's referring to his own person, that what Shimon has done, if he says Ani, is he also saying about himself if he has a son, or maybe it means Ani and I love you as much as you love yourself, and therefore I'm a Nazir when you have a son. Are you following here?
No, almost. In this case where he says, if we say that V'alai, which is less personal, I believe, right? And in that case, you're saying it refers to his own person, Agufe Mashma. It is more likely that a person will vow to be Nazir when he himself has a son, than when someone else has a son. Okay, if you want to say that he's referring to his own person, because that makes more sense, what about a case where he says, I'm going to be a Nazir when I will have a son, and his friend Shimon heard that and said, Va'ani, and I.
Yeah.
What is the law? That is, instead of saying Ve'alai, he said Va'ani. The phrase upon me may indeed refer to his own person. The same vow should be upon me as well. This connotation, however, is missing. When he merely says, and I, the latter lends itself more readily to interpretation. I, too, will be a Nazir when you have a son. Okay, Ve'alai is actually more to his own person and upon me. But when he says Va'ani, for whatever reason, it is more open to interpretation, and it could be still referring to you. I also will be. What is the law? Anashri, is he saying an I about himself, which he indicates to be a Nazir when he has his own son? I love you as much as you love yourself, and I too will be a Nazir when you have a son. Imtim Salemer Khal Ba'anfe. If you say that, as long as he says in the first person's presence, Kasifala Milsa. Go ahead, Rabbi Binyomin.
Right. So Imtim Salemer Khal Ba'anfe. As long as he says it in Reuven's presence, Kasifala Milsa. It is embarrassing for him to use this occasion to express his desire in having his own son. He's kind of embarrassed. What does this mean? The first person, Reuven, presumably takes this vow out of anguish that he does not have yet a son. It would therefore be awkward for Shimon to respond by declaring a vow in his hearing in order that he too have a son. Guess what? It would be insensitive to Reuven's, it's like this is Reuven's moment. Consequently, it should be assumed that when he says in Reuven's presence, that what he says in Reuven's presence is designed to show that he empathizes with Reuven, and that he too will become a Nazir when Reuven has a boy. Were his intent to vow about having his own son, he would have done so privately. So we're saying,
by the way,
now,
empathy is not the right word, because empathy is when you take it to yourself. It says empathizes. There's no good word here.
Sympathize?
No, there's no good word because in this case it's about him as well. But he's feeling his pain, nothing to do with Shimon's pain. He's feeling
Right.
Reuven's
He's
pain.
sympathizing
Right.
for, and that's why it's saying, we think it means, therefore it must mean, if he's doing it in front of Reuven, that it's in reference to Reuven having a son.
Right. And
Plus sympathizing.
right. So in that case, he's saying when Reuven has a son, then I'll also be a
Right.
Nazir.
And even then, even in his own presence, we still have to ask, Omar Hareini Nazir Kshil Ploini Ben. What if the person says, I'm a Nazir if Levi has a son? And then Shimon goes and says, and I, Mahu. So then what? Now we don't have this embarrassing thing. So do we say that since the second person's declaration, when Shimon says it, Levi's not there, therefore, Anaf Sheikha Amar, therefore, maybe Shimon is talking about if he himself has a son, he'll be a Nazir. I love Levi as you do, Reuven, and therefore I, Shimon, will be a Nazir with Levi. Son, Tibai, not Teiko, let it be asked. The question remains unresolved. If a person says, Va'ani, what
look at
is
that.
it referring to?
The term Tibai is similar to Teku. Both mean the question is left open. In tractate Nazir, Tibai is sometimes used in the place of Teku. This whole Masech is Nazir with the Rush and you see different sprach or whatever it is. There's something here in that. I remember in the introduction to Nazir, I don't think everyone had Masechtas Nazir readily available to them.
Interesting. It's a hairy beast. This one.
Oh, hairy beast, similar to Zichru, hairy.
Yeah,
to the Zichru app. I joined the WhatsApp group. They have a WhatsApp group in Yemen where they'll send you the animation of that day.
Oh, yeah?
I like that. You don't have to go digging for it. Sometimes I forget.
Cool. If it's not too hard, you could add me. Otherwise, just send me where I could do it.
It was different.
Okay, let's do the Mishnah. Go ahead.
Mishnah. I guess we've got. We'll stop. All right, that'll just do it. All right. Ellie, I feel like I've been hogging the mic, so let's hear it from you.
Okay, sure. Okay, the following Mishnah teaches the law of intervening Nazir's terms. Hareini Nazir. Someone says, I'm hereby a Nazir. The Nazir Kashiyah Li Bain, and I will again be a Nazir when I have a son. So he's a Nazir automatically, and then he's talking about another Nazir's term when he has a son. Hiskel Minash Eshalai, and he began counting, observing his own term. And a son was then born to him before the end of his own term, those 30 days. Mashlam Eshalai, he completes his own term, and then counts that of his son. Hareini Nazik Shieli Bain, if he says, I'm hereby Nazir when I will have a son, Vin Nazir, and I'm also hereby a Nazir, Hiskel Minash Eshalai, he begins counting his own term, right? Because the other one is not activated, I imagine. But this one is activated. The order is not going to help. Right. And his son was then born to him. Manich Eshalai, he sets aside his own term. We push pause on that bad boy. And counts his son's term. Ooh, I would not have said that, Rabbi Binyomin.
Oh, man.
For example, if the son was born 20 days into his personal term, the son's term interrupts his term, leaving him with 10 more days to complete on his personal term. After completing the 30 days of Naziris for the birth of his son, the person assumes his own term and observes the remaining 10 days. At the end of this time, having been a Nazir for 60 consecutive days, he shaves his head. Oh, you only shave your head once. Having been a Nazir for 60 consecutive days, he shaves his head and brings 2 sets of concluding sacrifices, one for his son's term and the other for his own term. Woo! He does not, however, shave his head at the conclusion of his Nazir. We need to have a button where we go, woo! He does not, however, shave his head at the conclusion of his son's Naziris before resuming his own Naziris.
Why?
This is one practical difference between observing the 2 Naziris terms consecutively, which is the Resha, and interrupting the first term to observe the second term and then resuming the first. Where the terms are observed consecutively, the person shaves his head and offers sacrifice at the conclusion of each term. Where the second term interrupts the first, he shaves his head only once at the end of the 60 days and bring 2 sets of Nazir sacrifice at the time. So it has to be a conclusion of the term in order to shave the head and bring the sacrifice. If it's broken up, wow, beautiful. Okay, so we're going to stop here, Rabbi Binyomin. We're going to take off the Gemara tomorrow. Again, a Yud Dalet is a short daf as well. Beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi Binyomin.
What time do you want to do tomorrow?
Tomorrow, let's be in touch tonight. But
I'm
I do
flexible.
think that the morning could potentially work for me. So I might, if you want to do 8:30, 8:40, you tell me.
That could work. That could work.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we're on for 8:30, 8:40 tomorrow. Rabbi Binyomin.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Awesome.
Or I might have chakras in the morning. Okay, we'll be
You know
back.
what? You tell me later. Yeah. All right.
Do that. Thanks.
See ya.
Okay.
Shkaya.
Call to